go. Walt, would you like to begin?
Well, why don't we do it this way? We do want to get to talking about the future, but there is some controversy that you've just been through. So let me just start by asking you, you have a business that's based on sharing. Obviously, people wouldn't go on Facebook unless they wanted to share with groups of people. But there is this perception that you're on a course or have been on a course to push people's information into a position where it's pretty much visible across the internet unless they do a bunch of stuff about it. Is that a wrong perception? Have you been wrongly labeled with that, or is that something that you didn't communicate right, or what is your feeling about that?
Sure. So, I mean, privacy is a really important issue for us and for the internet. So we spend a lot of time thinking about these things. In terms of the settings that we have, I think that there are some misperceptions. And then some of it, I think, is in line with what we're trying to do. So, you know, the primary things that people do on the service, like you were saying, are they use it to share with their friends and the people around them in their community, and they use it to stay connected, right, and to kind of keep in touch with people. And, you know, there are different parts of the service that people use for both, right? So a lot of the time when I talk about sharing, what I'm talking about is, you know, people will post a status update. You know, sometimes I'll do that and make it available to everyone at Facebook, everyone at the company. You know, sometimes you'll share photos, right? You might go on a vacation and take photos with your family and only want to share that with your family, right? And you have the control to be able to do that. So that's kind of on the sharing side. That's most of what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. Then there's the side around staying connected with people where, you know, you don't start off on Facebook with all of your real-life friends already being your friends. So people need to be able to search for you, type in your name, figure out which person you are, right? I mean, we probably have pretty unique names, but you know, our head of product's name is Chris Cox, so there's a million Chris Coxes. Someone looking for him needs to be able to know, okay, we share these friends. He works at Facebook. He's from this place. And having some information be visible more broadly is very valuable for that. So what we've found over time is that there are really good settings for people to have to enable people to stay connected with them and find them. And there are good kind of default ways that people want to be sharing information with the community around them. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. Now, I mean, there have been misperceptions that say that we're trying to make all the information open or something like that, and that's completely false. I mean, there are big buckets of information that we recommend that you share with, you know, only your friends privately, all the really sensitive stuff like your contact information, your address, your phone number, who can go and post stuff on your page. That stuff is all set to friends only. More sensitive stuff like photos of you or videos of you, we recommend that that's only visible to your friends of friends, right? People in the community around you. And then some of the more basic information, we recommend that that's visible to everyone.
Okay, now when you did that though, this is a complaint I hear from a lot of people, not Silicon Valley people, is they come to Facebook with the beginnings of, these are people I know that I'm linking with, and I'm not sharing with people I don't know, and I will pick who I know and who I don't know. Some of these things were changed because you recommend them. Perhaps we don't agree with your recommendations. Why did you go to that at that one point? Did you expect that kind of backlash? Or do you feel like it's a blogosphere backlash, that it's just annoying people like myself? Or do you feel like it's an actual genuine backlash that people were expecting one thing and then you recommended something but made it so before they had a chance to participate in it, which was Steve was talking about last night. You tell them again, you tell them again, and you tell them again in plain English.
Sure. So, I mean, I think the most important thing is we recommended settings for people. I mean, we always do, whether it's when they sign up or, you know, along the way when we launch new things. We recommended settings for people, and we asked that everyone go and review their settings and make a choice for what they want their settings to be. You know, so all of that process, I mean, we didn't change any settings or anything like that. I think that that's a really important piece of this. You know, the big feedback that we got that it really resonated with me was that over time, the privacy settings had just become too complex, right? We built privacy into every single product that we've ever launched, right? From the beginning of the site, each piece of information that you shared had a privacy setting. It's not only whether it's public or private, you can set it to be open to everyone, you could set it to be open to the communities around you, you could set it to be open to just your friends or even, you know, a smaller group than that. And over years of just launching products and products and products, we accumulated dozens of settings. So it really resonated, to me at least, when people were saying, you know, what we want to make sure is that we have control over how we're sharing information, but with all these settings, we're not sure how to use them. So that's what we did. We spent a couple of weeks building this. We built one main setting that people can now use so that it controls all of the information that they're sharing on a day-to-day basis, and you can just set it all to be open to everyone or friends or whatever you want.
Right, but there's a difference between sort of your user interface for your settings, which you have overhauled, and it's always good to be simpler. And I know that you can still go in and customize them and have the more complex view if you want, and that's all good. But the real issue is whether people trust that you're still on board with the idea that they thought you were on board with when they joined. And I think this is what Kara was saying, which is it's a place to share with people, a limited group of people, not an unlimited group of people, and certainly not the whole internet. And you did this instant personalization thing. You did these community pages. Is that what they were called?
Yeah.
These things just came at members of Facebook. You know, you go onto Facebook one day and there's an announcement from you guys that, oh, you know what? You know those interests you put on your page 3 years ago when you joined? Now they're all linked to some pages. And you're like, what? What does that mean? Who has access to those pages? What are those pages? In other words, you've done some abrupt things that, yes, there was a way to back out of them by going to privacy settings. But even if they were simpler privacy settings, you're still putting the onus on me to do some work to maintain the level of privacy I expected at the beginning. So the question that I have is not about whether your privacy settings were complicated or simple or better or worse, but why do I have to do the work to even go to them? Why are you taking preemptive steps that make me go and check and make sure that I have the control I want?
Sure. Well, I think that how the system is set up is a really important part for how it functions. Right? And before I was talking about how there are these two primary things that people do. They share information with the people around them. It's never been, you know, by default just your friends. It's always been kind of the community around you, whether it was colleges or companies or regions most recently. You know, and then the other thing is people want to stay connected with the people around them. And, you know, I mean, there's this thing that we're seeing more and more. There's this serendipity in how people are sharing information on these services. That can only happen when you're sharing it with, when you're sharing things with a broader group of people. So let me give you an example.
Yeah.
You know, pretty recently, I'd been trying to schedule a dinner just to hang out with our head of technical operations, Jonathan Heiliger, for weeks. And we hadn't been able to set it up just because we're both busy on different evenings. And one night I found, you know, my dinner plans got canceled. And I posted something online. It was like, OK, I'm going to this place, status, visible to the people in my community around me. And he replied, and he said, OK, I'm there. So I ended up going, and we ended up getting dinner, and it was this pretty kind of, it was this great kind of serendipitous moment that happens through sharing. And it's the type of thing that I think, it's the type of connection that gets made on Facebook.
I'm a little confused. You wanted to have dinner with one single person.
Well, no, I didn't expect that he was going to be there. So what I'm saying
because you could have emailed him, right? Or you could have texted him or something. And
maybe I'm not doing a great job telling the story. I was trying to get dinner with him for a while. I did not expect that he was going to be free.
I see.
That
Okay.
So you're talking about the idea
So
of
I was going to a place, and I ended up running into a friend there, right? And you know, I mean, that we call that serendipity, right? It's kind of a lucky coincidence when something like this happens. And I think one of the reasons why we consider this to be a lucky coincidence is because we miss most of the connections like that are happening in the world around us.
But you didn't answer my question. My question is, you seem to have taken some steps to make more public my information as a Facebook member on your own, by yourself, all of a sudden announcing them. And without, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, what I really have is I have X number of friends here. I'm happy to have them see my photos or my status messages. I'm happy to know when their birthdays are, happy to have them right on my wall. Why is the management of this company saying they're going to take some of my information and do some things with it?
Well, I think what it means is there's different levels of what sharing means to you, something different than what it means to Walt, obviously. You are thrilled if people know you're somewhere and they show up or something like that. Is there a level of privacy that just has to apply to everyone, or do you think, I mean, you might have a view of this is what privacy means to Mark Zuckerberg, so this is what it's going to mean at Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, people can control this right themselves. I mean, simple control has always been one of the important parts of using Facebook. And, you know, one of the interesting facts that I think a lot of people don't know is that more than 50% of Facebook users have changed a privacy setting at some point in their experience,
Right.
right? So most of users go through their settings and will tweak at least one thing. Now, I think that that's interesting because it shows that, A, people understand what the settings are, right? People are using them, right? So we go through and we recommend what we think are the right settings for people. And then they use the product if they want. They can change it if they want. People are. But also the majority of the people who are going through this aren't changing most of the settings, right? So they're going through and they're seeing the settings and changing what they want, but also kind of keeping the things that they want to have. So
Right.
to me, that's a signal that we're, on the whole, getting it right, but also doing a reasonable job of giving people control so that way they can go in and change the things that they want as well.
So do you feel like it's a backlash, or do you feel like you're violating people's privacy when you do? Because some things do, for better or worse, whether you deserve it or not. Some of these, you're a public figure, you get a lot of things. Those emails back in college, they stick to you now, whether you like it or not. And it's probably unfair to. I don't want to see texts I wrote when I was 19 years old, or maybe last week even. But truly, why does that? Do you feel like it sticks to you, or why does it? Because you happen to run a service that is sharing. How do you explain the hubbub around it? How do you? And it must affect you as a person because.
Yeah, I mean, when I was 18 or 19 years old, I did a lot of stupid things, right, when I was in college. And I think, I don't want to make an excuse for that. Right? I did stupid things. I think they're embarrassing, and I'm really sorry that I did them. Some of the things that people accuse me of are true. Some of them aren't. I think a lot of it has been pretty well documented.
Right.
The
Would
face
you like to
mask
say which
pranks.
ones are true?
I mean, I think I actually don't even know, looking back. The IMs are printed, it's tough for me to tell.
Right.
But I mean, there's face mash, right? I mean, there
Yeah.
are some IMs that have been printed. There are pranks, there's blogs. It's...
I think the issue is you became the head of the biggest social networking company on the planet.
Yeah, no,
Is
so,
the
but
thing.
I
So
think
everything
the
you said
interesting
then
thing is
matters.
that, so I started this when I was, started working on this type of stuff when I was 18, started building this when I was around 19 years old. And along the way, I just gained, I think, a lot of stuff changed as we've gone from building this project in a dorm room to now having a service that almost 500 million
Right,
people are
exactly.
using on a day-to-day basis. And,
Yeah, that.
well,
So they want to know who you are and what you actually think. I mean, and you should explain that to them. I mean, in some way. Do you feel like you're adequately portrayed as a? Because they want to wonder about the person who actually created this thing.
yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff happened along the way. I think, there were real learning points and turning points along the way in terms of building things. It really went from this position very early on where we were just in this college dorm room to we moved out to California. It was a few friends and me. And, it just kind of had this project feel for a while. And there was this real turning point when companies started trying to buy the company for a huge amount of money. And, I had to kind of get my friends together and we had to decide what was it that we really cared about and what was it that we wanted to do. And, we decided not to take those offers. And,
Right.
To me, a lot of that decision was that what we wanted to do and what we wanted to spend, a big part of our lives doing was just continuing to push and kind of build products that help people share information,
Right.
build products that help people stay connected. And that's really what we're spending our time doing. And I think there's just been a lot of space between that early stuff and where we are now. If I knew what I knew now then I hope I wouldn't have made those mistakes. But I can't go back and change the past. I can only do what we think is the right thing going forward.
So, before we move off this privacy thing, and I thought that was a
All
fascinating
right,
answer.
it's okay. You want to take off the hoodie?
I never take off the hood.
I know you don't. What's with that? There's a group of women in the audience that wish you would. And
No.
girls?
Whoa.
All right.
Sorry. Yeah, that's okay.
Can you explain what this instant personalization thing was that you did and why you did it and what's the value of it to your users?
Maybe I should take off the hoodie.
Take off the hood.
Go ahead.
You want
What
to?
the hell?
You want? Go ahead. Here. Let me get someone. You all right?
Yeah.
This is a great moment in internet history.
What?
You all right?
What are we going to do with the mic?
Put it on your,
All right.
Put it on the collar of your T-shirt. Do you want?
you need some help?
No, I'm good.
All right. Okay. Mark?
Sorry about the.
Sorry about being warm, Mark.
No, it's,
We're not even yelling at you
Yeah.
yet.
We're not going to yell at it.
No, of course not. That is a warm hoodie.
Yeah. No, it's a thick hoodie. It's a company hoodie. We print our mission on the inside.
What?
Oh,
my
really?
God, the inside of the hoodie, everybody. Take a moment. What is it? Making the...
Making the world more open and connected.
Oh, my God. It's like a secret
Cool.
cult. Look at that. Making the world open and connected. Stream graph platform. And this weird symbol in the middle that is probably for the Illuminati. Oh, 2010.
No, it's 2010.
Oh, no. I read Dan Brown on the...
So what is instant personalization, and why did you do it? What's it?
sure. So I mean, so what we're trying to do is, you know, we're building Facebook in this way what we think is pretty different from most other sites, right? And it's a lot more engaging than you know, almost every other website out there. And we think that the reason for that is that it's designed around people fundamentally. You know, when you look at Newsfeed, we've done these interesting eye tracking studies where, you know, to see how people use the site. And unlike most applications, people don't browse through looking at navigation. They browse through looking at people, right? It's like you kind of fixate on a person's face and you navigate through that. So in a lot of apps, you might kind of go to messages and create messages through that. On Facebook, what you do is a lot of people navigate, they go to a person and they choose to send them a message or write on their wall or view their photos or whatever they're going to do. And we just think that this model is a more engaging way to build apps. And you know, so we built a bunch of them ourselves, whether it was photos or videos.
Right.
And what we have this strategy where what we're trying to do is make it possible for everyone to build different social apps that are basically designed with people at their center. And that's what a lot of the stuff that we started talking about at F8. Right. We started the strategy around 2007 where people could build apps inside Facebook. There are now more than 1 million developers doing that, ranging from, you know, the largest companies like Zynga that have really started the whole social gaming thing that's now a multi-billion-dollar industry, to a lot of hobbyist developers. And what we're trying to do now is make it so that people can extend that outside of Facebook, right? Because we never thought that it would all kind of stick within one website to the rest of the web. So we have focused on a number of different things that make it so that people can build these people-centric websites and apps on their phones and desktop software. And one of the main things that we've done is social plugins, right? Which basically it means that with a single line of code, you can just kind of insert a plugin onto your site. A lot of news sites have done it. ABC, a lot of different news sites, and that is a really simple way to personalize your site, right? And actually, since F8, 200,000 different sites have started using social plugins, and most of them have seen that their referral rate from Facebook users has gone up by about 2x, right? So it's been a big increase in terms of the engagement on the site that people have gotten from making their site more designed from the ground up around people.
All right, so I get that
instant
part.
personalization is kind of the other side of that program, right? We're trying to make it so that you know, all of these sites can be designed around people, you know, all these different websites, applications. And social plugins, I think, are going to be the primary way that happens. But for sites that are, you know, more technical and want to build things, you know, kind of the whole stack themselves, we wanted to have a program where we could partner with just a handful of sites to make it so they can use only the information that's open to everyone on Facebook to personalize things. So for example, Pandora is an application where you can go, and if you've set your music to be visible to everyone, then it can access your music and it can start playing songs that you like as soon as you show up on their site. And it's a great integration, and it's a good personalized experience as soon as you use it that they've kind of coded in collaboration with us. So that's kind of how we see this whole picture evolving.
Why not when I log on to Facebook, say, hey, we've got this new thing with Pandora, if you happen to also like Pandora, which would do just what you just described, which sounds great. Check here if you want to do it. You did it kind of the opposite.
Well, we have that program. It's Regular Connect, right? I mean, like any website.
It's been very popular.
Right, but what's
yeah,
the
hundreds
problem?
of thousands of sites have used
So
it.
you
Well, so-
sort of put up a notice saying, what is it, Microsoft, Docs, what the other one was Yelp, I
Yeah,
think?
so Docs, Yelp, and Pandora are partners for this. So what we found
You are
is that,
automatically now instantly personalized there without asking.
So what we've found is that, so a lot of sites are using Connect. It's more than 100,000.
Right.
But it's actually, even though it's just one click to click on this blue button to use Connect, it's a lot more friction than I think it seems, right? Because like you go to a site like Yelp or you go to a site like Pandora, and you're going because you want to use Pandora, and it's not immediately clear what you get if you had a personalized experience or if the site if it knew who all your friends were. So that's why we're doing the push both around social plugins and around instant personalization at the same time, right? It's this big push where we just think that all of these different products are going to get an order of magnitude better when they're designed with people at their core.
But shouldn't people make the decision themselves to opt into it? This is my last question on this, seriously. But I don't understand. Yeah, thanks. Shouldn't people, well, I'm sorry if you don't think it's important, but I do. So shouldn't people have to opt in?
I think that making these products that people can share and that people have control and that are simple to do both is this balance, right? An opt-in versus opt-out is one part of that balance, right? So, for example, we've added a lot of products as time has gone on. When we launched the first version of Facebook, there were no messages on the site, right? So, I think clearly when we added messages, I think it was fine to make it so, you can go now and you can turn off messages if you want, and you can make it so that people can't message you. But that we thought that was right to have as an opt-out thing. Similarly, when we launched Newsfeed, there was a pretty big backlash around that. That was actually, per the ratio of Facebook users, 10% of Facebook users were protesting, and a lot of what people wanted was, let us turn it on, or at least just make it so that people have to choose to turn it on before they can use Newsfeed. Looking back on it, I think Newsfeed is such a critical part of the experience that it would have been pretty crazy if now, when you sign up for Facebook, if you had to choose that you want to turn on each individual one of these features if Newsfeed wasn't there by default. There are whole services that all they are now is a Newsfeed.
Okay.
So, I think it's a balance on all these things.
Which you do some of the picking and other people do some of the
picking. And I don't know if we always get it right and we always want to listen to feedback and do what we think are the right things. But my prediction would be that a few years from now, we'll look back and wonder why there was ever this time when all these websites and applications, whether they're mobile applications or websites, weren't personalized in some way, whether it's through social plugins or Connect or instant personalization or whatever programs other companies come out with. But I just think that the world is moving in this direction where things are going to be designed more around people. And I think that that's going to be a really powerful direction.
Let's talk about where that's going. Let's talk about the next phase of social networking. Here you are, you've gotten to you're about to announce 500 million users and have a lovely party, I understand. What are you going to, 1 billion? What's the goal? What is the next phase of social networking? Because you have such a massive influence on the rest of the ecosystem now. What do you imagine? What are 3 or 4 things you see on the short-term horizon and long-term horizon?
Well, I think that the industry it's come a long way in the last 5 years, right? From these sites like Friendster and MySpace and the first version of Facebook that were really these walled garden sites, to now becoming more of a social platform, right? And I just think that trend is going to continue. So what we found was, Facebook built a lot of these apps itself. Early on, we built photos, we built groups, we built events, and those are respectively the most used photos, groups, events, applications online. And along the way, we just realized, we're never going to build all of these applications ourselves, and it would be the wrong strategy for us to try to do that. So we started building this platform and opening up over time. And it's interesting because the privacy concerns that people have around having their information with third-party applications is something that I think over time, people use these applications. They have a good experience with them. They understand the controls that they have, and they can get more comfortable as that happens. So that's one of the reasons why, when we started with applications, we started off building it inside Facebook to begin with. Mm-hmm. But the goal was never to have all these applications built inside Facebook. It was to make it so that every application that gets built in every industry can be designed in this new way around people first. And that's really the direction that I think it's going in. So, first we built some of the core apps, then platform inside Facebook, then Connect, now social plugins and instant personalization. And I just think we're going to look out, over the next few years, and a lot of the industries that there hasn't been innovation in for a while are going to have new applications built that are built with people at their core.
Such as?
Such as anything. I mean, I think Yelp is actually a really interesting example where, there have been directories of businesses for a long time, but now, now for the first time, there's this service where you can go and you can see what your friends like, and you can see what people around you are reviewing and people that you respect, and just being able to go now, and I mean, Yelp is one of the instant personalization partners, and being able to see what the people around you are connected to, I just think it adds an element to the experience that is both qualitatively good and is extremely good for engagement and use of the site.
Can I ask you what you think is meant by the social graph? Is that something that Facebook controls, or somebody else controls, or what's the social graph, and secondly, how can it be monetized in a way that's fair to the people who use it, who are included in it?
Well, I mean, so the idea of the social graph that we introduced this at the first F8 in 2007 when we rolled out Platform, and it was kind of our way of explaining the phenomenon that we thought was happening in the world. And the idea of the social graph is that if you mapped out all of the connections between people in the world, that it would form this graph. And what we're trying to do at Facebook is just try to map out the connections that people have, because we think that once those connections are mapped out, then you can start to offer all these great social products, both as part of Facebook.com and all the different Facebook services that people use, Facebook Mobile, all the things like that, but also start to enable this broader platform where people can build games, they can start to remake any site or application on the web around knowing who you know, and kind of personalizing things to you. So, it's been this interesting thing, because I think a lot of people have characterized it as if somehow we own the graph, or we're trying to own the graph, or someone else has a graph, and it's not really how we intended it at all. We think that there is a graph in the world, and that the best that anyone can do is try to map it out, and that even better now with some of the open graph stuff that we're doing, when different services can pool their different respective parts of maps of the graph together, then you can build even better services that combine all this stuff together.
And how do you look at Facebook's role in the graph? You're a very big part of this graph, if that's the case. If it's built around people, a lot of things have been built around search, they've been built around all kinds of things, but not necessarily people. Where does Facebook, what kind of power are you in this graph?
Well, I think people rely on us for two things. One is just the service that they use on a day-to-day basis to share and stay connected with the people around them and their friends. But also, I think people look to us as the leader in this space. And I think that there's a pretty widely held belief that as far as social networking has come, and having almost 500 million users is certainly a pretty cool milestone that we're definitely proud of, that we can serve that many people. I think that people generally also believe that we're much closer to the beginning of the space than we are to the end. And I think that that's a theme in a lot of the changes that we make, is that it would be easy for us to just kind of keep things going the same as they are, right? And we grow because people refer their friends to the site. We do no advertising, so everyone who signs up for the site is doing it because one of their friends told them to get on the site. And certainly, on a day-to-day basis, if we didn't disrupt things, that would be kind of the easiest way to proceed. But we don't believe that if we did that, we'd be doing the best thing for either us long-term, or for the industry, or for where we hope that the world gets to. So, we continue to do what we think are the right changes, even if some of them are controversial, especially at the time when we do them. And we think that that's a lot of what kind of people are counting on us to do as the leader in the space.
And how does the social graph get monetized?
Well, there are two kind of primary ways. One is, we can provide really good, relevant advertising to people because they tell us exactly what they're interested in and who they know, and those people tell us what they're interested in.
Right.
So that's one piece of it, where I think the advertising in these systems, I think, will get much more relevant than than that in a lot of other systems very quickly. And I mean, there's some stat quoted today about how the number of advertisers in the system has grown by 4x over the last year and a half alone. And just having all those different ads in the system makes it so that there's more to draw from and that people get more relevant ads. The other part is around engagement, right? Because what people are doing on the site is they're sharing stuff with their friends, and the ads reflect that as well, right? So I mean, there are interesting examples like what we're doing with Starbucks, where I mean, this was their first, I think one of their first major online ad campaigns, and they now have more than 7 people are connected to or fans of and like the Starbucks presence online. And the ad campaign that they did was around basically giving away some free products in their stores, and the ad was basically, it said, okay, there's this day where there's free stuff, and people invited their friends, and it was basically an event on the site. And people basically engaged their friends and got their friends to go. So in the same way that people are organically sharing information on the site, people are doing that around these brands as well, and it's proving to be really efficient for this kind of advertising.
So who do you see as your competitors? I asked you this at F8, and we went back and forth, but who do you actually, when you think about competition, or do you think about it at all? Who do you think about as your major people that you think about every day?
I mean, there's all the usual suspects in the space, but I think we have such a different approach than others in terms of trying to build the web in this way from the ground up around people. I mean, some other folks have different approaches, like Google focuses on building it around links, right? And different other companies focus on building out the ecosystem around different things. I mean, Apple is around apps, right? And I mean, certainly, I think we compete with different companies in different ways, but I mean, one thing that I try to do in running the company is not make some of the same mistakes that I've seen other companies make. We try to make different mistakes.
Right.
And
doing a good job.
Thank you. And one mistake that I think a lot of companies make is they focus on what are the big companies in the space that could potentially be their big competitors. And I think people kind of over-rotate on that sometimes. I mean, the big example was in all the early Apple clips, there's all the stuff about how Apple and Steve Jobs are trying to rally people against IBM, but really what they needed to worry about was a smaller company, right, that few people had heard of at the time. And I think that's probably more apt, right? I mean, the world is changing so quickly now with mobile stuff and just different platforms emerging that I think it's more likely that the biggest competitor for us is something that we haven't heard of. And I think what that means for us is that we should just really stay focused on what we're doing, right? I think we have a pretty ambitious goal for the world and what we think will make the web better, what we think will make all these businesses that integrate with us run more effectively, what we think will be disruptive and make it so that new businesses can grow. And I think if we stay focused on doing that, that's really the main thing that we need to do. So I realize it's kind of, it's not.
It's a perfectly legitimate answer. That's your answer.
You're going to be the CEO of this company when it goes public? That's your intent?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think about going public.
How do you feel as
much.
well, do you have a date?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we're really just focused on building the stuff that we're doing now. Okay. I mean, it's actually kind of crazy how much stuff is changing right now. I mean, the last time I was on stage at D, it was 2 years ago, right? And we had less than 100 million people using the service. We hadn't launched Connect yet, right? So the only platform that there was people building these apps inside Facebook.
Right.
And I mean, so that's 2 years, right? And I think, the next few years I think are going to be as transformative as the last 2 years, if not more, because I'm really excited about the stuff that we're doing with plugins and instant personalization and some other things that we'll do going forward that are just going to make it so that people can remake their businesses in this way that it's focused around people. And as the stats kind of come out around how partners are using this stuff and the success that they're having, the massive increase in referrals that they're getting in traffic that they're getting from plugins, or the massive increase in registrations that people are getting from different plugins and instant personalization, I think it's just going to be a really compelling move to change a lot of the way that the web works towards being built not just around web links, but around people. And I think that's going to be exciting.
I'm sharing this time as people.
Well, I mean, I say sharing a lot still, too.
But the people theme is...
Last question. How do you think you are? What have you learned as a CEO in the past 2 years? How do you think you've evolved? We talked about this a little last
Yeah.
night. You were talking about some things get to you. I mean, you're not happy about this movie coming out, but how
Well,
do
I
you
mean, I just wish that no one made a movie about me when I was alive.
Okay. Did you eat koala meat?
What's up?
Did you eat koala meat?
I don't even know if you can eat koala meat.
Okay, all right, excellent. How do you see yourself as a CEO? What is your leadership style?
You know, I've always just focused on a couple of things around this. And one is kind of having a clear direction for the company and what we build. And the other is just trying to build the best team possible towards that. And, you know, in terms of a clear direction, I think we have a pretty clear theme behind all of the things that we're doing, whether it's the product that we're building internally. And, you know, over the next year, one of the things that I'm really excited about is we're building a lot of apps that we think are really cool, too. And then obviously all the platform stuff we're really excited about, just because of the success that we think that that's going to bring partners and how that's going to enable people who are using the web to have a pretty different experience. So there's just a huge amount of effort going on around that. And then on the people side, just continuing to bring in great people and put them in roles where they're empowered is a big focus for what we do. So in the last couple of years, I mean, today we announced that, and I just promoted Brett Taylor to be our CTO, and he joined us during the FriendFeed acquisition. We've done a number of talent acquisitions, and we really are out in the valley trying to find the most talented people who are entrepreneurial. I mean, we want to build an entrepreneurial company, and we think that a key part of doing that means that at all levels of the company, including the senior management, you need to have entrepreneurs and you need to have technical people. So, I mean, we're out recruiting and trying to get the very best people that we can into those roles. And you know, so it's a balance from that and people who have grown inside the company, like Chris Cox, our head of product, who started off as an engineer on the original Newsfeed team and is one of the most phenomenal people who I know, and, you know, everyone who works with him says that. To also, you know, we have folks who've joined us like Cheryl on you know, the business side to build up all of our operations around the world. And she's doing a phenomenal job bringing in great people and building things up. So I think as a company, if you get those two things right, having a clear direction on what you're trying to do and bringing in great people who can execute on this stuff, then you can do pretty well. And that's what we've focused on.
Well, you did well here.
You did well.
So thank
Very
you.
good. I'm sorry for taking off your hoodie, but
No, I
it was a good
clearly
idea.
needed to do that.
So questions for Mark?
Sure.
Rob.
Yeah. Hey, Mark. Kind of a simple question. Do you realize that you have already built, at the age of 26, one of the maybe 5 most important internet companies in the world, which is an amazing accomplishment? And then corollary to that, that the world kind of looks at you differently as a result, and that there's kind of this interesting challenge. I saw this in my 10 years at Microsoft and didn't see it at my 15 years at Real, but saw a little version of it, I guess. That the world looks at you differently, and that it's almost like the expectation changed, and it's like nobody puts out a banner and tells you that. And how do you deal with that? Both, I mean, really mostly professionally. It's a personal question too, but I mean, the fact that already Facebook is maybe, I mean, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, I don't know who else I'd put in the list, so that's why I said 5.
This is a Greg Coleman area. Go ahead.
Yeah, how do you deal with that realization that the world is looking at you and Facebook differently than it did 1 or 2 years ago because of the amazing success of what you've done?
You know, maybe I'm in denial. You know, I think our goals haven't really changed much at all, right? And inside the company, I mean, we don't think of ourselves as a company that's successful, right? So we know that we have these products that people use and that they love, and that the site is growing because people share it with their friends, and we see platform and how that's growing and how it's successful for the businesses that work with us, and we see the advertising stuff and see how that's going and creating some of the best campaigns that our partners have ever had. But you know, it goes back to this concept where I just think we're a lot closer to the beginning than the end. And I don't know. I mean, I guess as companies get bigger, people expect you to slow down and do less crazy stuff. And I guess I hope we never do that. And, you know, so I mean, personally, I don't know. I guess I have a core group of people who I really trust. A lot of them I've worked with for a long time, 4 or 5 years, since we really started.
Really?
Yeah. The company's only 6 years old.
You know, any less.
You know, and for the first year, it wasn't really even a company, right? Because, I mean, it was this project at Harvard before we moved out. We didn't even start hiring people until 5 years ago. But whether it's them or my friends, I think that's what I care about, right? I mean, there are people who share my values and the values of the company, and who think that making the world more open and connected is a good thing, and that's what we're trying to do. And I think it's kind of inevitable, I guess, that whenever we make a change or at this scale, there are going to be some people who think what we're doing is cool and some people who don't. And I don't know, I guess we try to not let that get to us, and we just try to do what we think are the right things to do, and then listen to the feedback and tweak from there.
Thanks, Rob. Esther?
This is two questions which may actually have the same answer.
Mm-hmm.
And the first is, who's your role model and why? And the second is, accepting people who are at Facebook and yourself, who would be the best person to run Facebook?
Huh. I don't know if I can answer either of those questions. Who's my role model? I mean, there's so many people I look to for different things. I mean, there are so many amazing people who've built great things in this industry, but yeah, I mean, I feel like I learn the most from the people who are around me now and who I've worked with over time, right? And if something happened to me, I think you could pick any of the core people on Facebook, and they would on the management team, and they would all do a good job running the company. And I mean, that's I think how you want to build these companies, right? Is that I think people really share the vision of what we're trying to do. And you try to build people hire people not just to be able to do a role, but because they can, run the whole company, right? I mean, and I think it's important because we're still a pretty small company. I think that's pretty important to remember, right? So for the footprint that we have, having only around 1,000 people is, I think, relatively pretty small. But I think that one of the things that means is that the company is also going to grow a lot over the next few years. And it's going to be an exciting period, but we want to have people around us who we trust to make good decisions as it's growing, and who can run things that are a lot bigger than what they're doing now. So I really think any of the core people would be good choices.
Yeah, it was not a practical question.
Thanks, Esther.
Hi, Mark. Dave Geller. A lot of us are using email clients and services from Gmail and Yahoo and Hotmail, and we're also using your platform, of course. I had heard that you're planning to offer basically an email platform so that people can just use Facebook for everything. Is that true?
We're working on a number of things, but we're not building a webmail competitor. People do messaging on Facebook, right? So it's one of the primary use cases of what people do.
Outside of the Facebook world, in and out of your platform, like an email platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is actually one of the most interesting things that's going on today, is communication is getting to be shorter form, more informal, and more frequent, right? So I think that SMS is a much more interesting platform, or IM, than email is today, right? And it's also, why I think status updates are increasingly common, and there are probably an order of magnitude more people posting status updates than write long-form blog posts, right? So there are definitely these great services that people use that are these full webmail clients, but that's not what Facebook is, right? I mean, Facebook has a messaging application. It has an IM application, which, interestingly enough, the IM thing is run by one person. I think it's maybe the second largest IM network in the world. And so, there's a lot of room for improvement in these things just because it's so basic in terms of what we're doing right now compared to what we can be doing. But I think that a lot of the opportunity is going to be around fusing these shorter form communication, higher frequency, less formal things together, not in doing the email stuff that people have been doing in the past.
Right here.
We talked about the power of defaults and privacy settings and decisions that you've made. How are decisions made at your company about important decisions like that? So, for example, Microsoft does a lot of prototyping with customers. Google does A/B testing. Steve Jobs purportedly makes the last call himself. How does it happen for Facebook?
So we're a company where there's a lot of open dialogue inside the company, and we have only 5 core values, and being open inside the company is one of them, right? Because we feel like if we want to lead this trend outside the company, then that's a really important thing for us to do inside the company as well. So we have crazy dialogue and arguments. People send out ideas. I mean, every Friday I have an open Q&A where anyone in the company can come and ask me any question they want. And people ask me hard questions, right? So it's actually, should have been pretty good practice for this. But it's not. I wear my hoodie there, and it's fine. But our style is really two things. We like to innovate, doing what we think is kind of the principled right thing to do, and build the product that we think is the right thing. But because we're a web product, we can also change pretty quickly. So we also listen in real time to the feedback that we're getting from people, and that takes two primary formats. I mean, one is we listen to all the kind of anecdotal feedback, all the emails that we get, all the posts that people make on Facebook, the blog posts that they write, all the things that people tell us. But we also look at the data of how people are actually using the site, right? And how people are using the products that we launch. Because we know that people, a lot of the time when we'll change something, they won't like the change, but we'll be able to tell very quickly how they're using the products and whether they're being able to use them to share more, or whether they're promoting the site more to their friends, or whatever they're doing. And in response to the most recent stuff that we did, we innovated. We changed a lot of the products around platform to be what we thought that they should be, and that had these privacy implications. And we did what we thought were the right things around the defaults. And then we listened, and we got a lot of feedback. And the biggest point of feedback that we got was that people wanted simpler controls. So we actually, a team of us, we holed up in a conference room for 2 weeks to go crank out a new set of settings. And I was there for a lot of it, and a lot of other folks were there, and they didn't sleep, and they didn't change clothes, and they were just there, and they built this thing, and then we shipped it. So, I mean, that's how the company works.
Do you make a lot of the last calls on big decisions? So
yeah, I mean, if it's something that needs to get a tie broken or something like that, or if it's a really important thing, then definitely people will bring it to me, and I'll make those decisions.
All right, very quick, last two questions.
Okay.
Very quick.
Just want to make a quick question about the Flash versus HTML5. A lot of people on stage have been talking about how much they love the iPad, but when you want to use Facebook, there are some aspects of it that don't work, like Farmville, and there's millions of people who play that. So when it comes to Facebook, what's your sort of opinion on the two technologies? Should you have to make a Facebook HD app for people to get the full experience, or should it happen on the web?
I mean, we're agnostic, I think, on that. I tend to believe more in the web than apps, personally, but I think we'll see, and I think that there will be both. I think that there's a real reason why there are apps on mobile phones specifically. I just think that the internet connections and the power and the CPU are not effective enough to have the best HTML experience yet. But I think that'll change, and we'll see how it goes, and there are these two good platforms. The thing that I actually care a lot more about is it's not the vertical platform of kind of you have the operating system and then you have an app, or you have a browser and then you have a website. It's how you integrate people into all of this stuff. Right, and so it's a different cut at the problem, I think, and we just want to build tools that people can make all this stuff good. So, I mean, on phones, actually, I think a lot of this stuff is a lot easier to do. I mean, when you buy an Android phone, one of the first things that you do is you can sign in with your Facebook account, and it just brings all of your friends into the contact address book. And I mean, this is something that I think a lot of people may not know about how iPhone and Android phones work. But every application that runs automatically gets access to all of your friends and all of the contacts that are there. So in a way, I think it's going to be a lot easier to have these great personalized and instantly social experiences on those devices than on the web, because of some of the expectations that people have around how this stuff works today. But I think it'll get there for all this stuff. I just think it'll take a bit of time. But that's the trend that I'm the most focused on.
Okay, last very quick question.
Hey, Mark, you almost answered the question there, but Facebook crashes regularly on my iPhone, and I don't have an iPad-specific version of Facebook, and I wonder if you could go a little further in terms of, what it means to Facebook to have mobile apps. And you just referred to how, socializing, we all have our phones with us here, but we don't have our computers. So we're really using our phones as a way to gain access to Facebook and to socialize with our friends. What is the role of the phone?
Yeah, I mean, our mobile experience is growing really quickly. So I don't want to misquote any stats, but I know that it's well more than 100 million people are using Facebook on their mobile phones now, and that's grown by 3 or 4x in the last year alone. So I mean, that's growing at a much faster rate than the web version is. But people use it all different ways. A lot of people use the web on my iPad. I use the website, and I think that it's kind of all you need. On the iPhone, the app is great. There's Zero, which we launched recently, which is a trimmed down version for markets where the bandwidth, so people can get cheaper access to it. You can get free access to Facebook, free data, because there are actually no pictures. That's stripped out of that version of it, but these are in areas where the bandwidth is just a lot slower. So, I think that one of the challenges and one of the things that's interesting about mobile is that there's no standard platform yet. It's not like the web where, 6 years ago when I was getting started building Facebook, there was no question what I was going to build on. It was going to be a website, and it was kind of clear how that was going to work. Now, it's unclear, is it going to be Android, is it going to be iPhone, is it going to be HTML5 or apps or any number of other platforms. And I think that's a challenge, but it's also kind of cool to see what experiences you can make possible in these different things and triangulate off of those to get to figure out where we're hoping to be. So,
are you going to have an iPad? Are you going to have an iPad?
I assume eventually we will. Yeah. The company is. I think it's an interesting thing to remember about us is we're still a pretty small company. I was writing this email announcing Brett's new role as CTO, and I was talking about some of the projects that he's going to get involved in, and I was talking about Newsfeed, which I think is going to be one of them, which is the homepage for more than 250 million people every day, and the team of people that works on it is 11 people. And search, we have this great typepad, and people do queries, and the number of queries is on the order of magnitude of what Google is doing, and it's not what Google is doing, but it's on the same order of magnitude, and the team working on search is 12 people, I think, and the whole team working on platform, which we hope will blossom to be the foundation of this whole industry, is I think it's around 25 or 30 people. And I talked about IM before, and that was one person. So we have a lot more to do, right? And that's like one of, I think, the most exciting things for the next few years is we're nowhere near the set of things that we think should get built. And I think that's one of the exciting things about working at Facebook now. It's one of the exciting things about doing what we're doing, and it's just a cool place to be.
Great. Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
That's great. You did a good job. Don't worry.